Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Point. Hope you guys are all doing well. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and it's a Wednesday, and I'm in a different location. I'm here in Halifax watching the World Junior Hockey Championships. It's semifinal Wednesday, and it's been a fun trip so far. An incredible game Monday night between the Team Slovakia and Team Canada. Truly an electric sporting event. The Halifax Metro Center, now the Scotiabank, lived up to the hype. The arena was buzzing. The feel in there, absolutely incredible. So, if you can get to one of these last games, I know they're not cheap. Looking at StubHub and Ticketmaster last night, I highly recommend it because it was a lot of fun to be in there. Going to both games today, Czechia and Sweden at 3:30, and then Canada and US in the featured semifinal tonight at 7:30. So it should be a really fun day. Today on the show, I'm going to preview the games today. I do want to talk a little bit about the quarterfinals and what I thought of those games, and just some players that impressed me watching live, and things that I took away from the games. So we'll do that today. I'll talk about keys to today's games, the matchups, the storylines, things of that nature for the two semifinals. So that's what's on tap today. However, I do want to start the show by talking. It was a great night Monday. I watched the game. You're coming down for a high, from that high, and with my cousin Sora, and I said, I can't go to bed yet. I was still, it was if, you played the game. I was that invested. And we decided to go for a cider, and that's great. And I get to the restaurant, and I learn about Darmar Hamlin. And this was the Monday Night Football game between the Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. And if you're not familiar with it, Darmar Hamlin is a player in the secondary for the Buffalo Bills. And he made a play on tackled Hayden Hurst, just a routine play, and then he got up, and before the next play could happen, he collapsed on the field. They needed a CPR. They used CPR on him on the field. They needed to kind of bring him back to life. Went into cardiac arrest, and it was a scary, scary thing. It was a great high, and then you learn about that, and it just kind of brings you down. And I've been thinking about it over the last 24 to 48 hours. And you think about the sport that I love so dearly, and that's the NFL. I absorb it. I consume it more than anybody. I talk about it on this show all the time. And unfortunately, this injury is part of the sport. It's part of the game. You don't see it often, but this injury brought me back to, it was another Monday Night Football game. It was Bengals, oddly enough, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in that game, Ryan Shazier, a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, made a routine hit a guy in the back, but his head made contact with the man's back. He collapsed. He's just learned how to rewalk. I remember watching the game. It was an eerie feeling. They finished that night, but again, Ryan Shazier will never play football again, and that was just an injury that stuck with me. The same thing here. Of course, Damar Hamlin is the most important factor here. The game of football is secondary. Anybody that said the game should continue, to me, doesn't get it, doesn't see the plot, doesn't see the forest from the trees. A person's life is more important than a sport. And I think for this particular instance, Damar, and I'm sorry, and it's hard putting this into words, but in this particular instance, if I'm the NFL, I have a hard time justifying playing games until I know Damar's state. And that can be good or bad. If you think of oftentimes in life, when you have a loved one, close friend that is in a bad way, they're in the hospital, they're sick, your life goes on hold until you get some finality, until there's a resolution, until there's an ending to that story. And it's not often a good end to the story. There are times when you have a family member that has cancer or somebody that gets sick and they go into the hospital and there's a good chance they're not getting out. But your life is shifted to that person until they're gone. In this case, Damar, I read a report this morning because I wanted to be informed. Justine Anderson works for CBS. She said that they're starting to see Damar's heartbeat increase a little bit. That's a positive sign. I'll take any positive you can get that hopefully this young man is okay. He's the same age as me, Darmar Hamlin. He's 24 years old, which is staggering that he is fighting for his life. And he went into cardiac arrest. He's one of the most conditioned athletes in the world, and he nearly died. So, to me, the NFL should consider putting the season on hold. We did it for the pandemic. We did it for bigger things, and I get it's about money, but sometimes it's more than just money. If I'm a Buffalo Bills teammate, I have a hard time playing when I don't know what's happening with Damar, when I don't have that kind of feeling, good or bad. Hopefully it's a good end to the story. I don't think it's such a bad thing that the NFL holds back and you got to have the Super Bowl in the middle of February, so be it. I don't think this is going to be an issue that the Players Association is going to fight you tooth and nail on because it's about one of their own. It's about one of their brothers. So if you need to delay the season in the NFL until you get some kind of answer on Damar Hamlin, I think it's a fair call. I don't think it's drastic. I don't think it's woke. I just think it's a smart decision. Asking his teammates to go out there and play when they don't know if he's going to live or die, I think is really unfair and not something that we ask of people in daily life. And these are football players. They're no different than me and you. So that's how I would approach this if I'm the National Football League. These weekend's games are paused. They're not played. I think they will play them because it's the NFL and it's about making money and it's about the product. And there's deadlines and you have to get the Super Bowl. It's supposed to be on February 12th, so you have to have the Super Bowl on February 12th, whatever. I think Arizona would push back the Super Bowl. They want to have that there, Super Bowl week. And it coincides with the Waste Management, which is my favorite golf tournament of the year. But again, there are bigger things in having tournaments coincide. There are bigger things in having events that match up with one another. His life is more important than that. And that's how I think they should approach this moving forward. So, obviously, thoughts and prayers to Damar Hamlin, everybody that's, doing. I think this is something we can unite on. Everybody I'm not a person that prays. I'm not a person that does that kind of thing. But I don't judge people that are. I think that's a good thing. How everybody approaches this in their own way is their own way. And I think it's all positive because I think we all want the same thing, for Damar Hamlin to be okay. For Damar Hamlin to hopefully play not the game of football, but the game of life again. To live a life where he has some function, where he can be, he can live happily. Football is secondary. I view life as a game in and of itself because I think there are winners and losers in the game of life. And I think it's the way you approach it, the way you attack said game. Hopefully, the good result happens. Hopefully, we're all playing the game of life, and Damar can continue to play that game with us. So, thoughts to Damar Hamlin, and hope to hear good news that I can relay to you all tomorrow. on the show. Now, an easy transition back to the World Junior Hockey Championships. The quarterfinals are often a day that doesn't always bring great product. You can see games that can have high scoring because there are lopsided teams playing one another, and we did see that in two of the 4 games. But then there are games that bring great energy, great value, and that certainly was Canada and Slovakia. I was asked before the game, I thought Slovakia might win 5-2. I knew they would fight. I knew they would put up a good fight because I watched every game they played in the preliminary round in Moncton. They are a team that has many dimensions to them. I thought they have one of the best goaltenders in the tournament, in Adam Gahan, who was fantastic the other night. And they just have some highly skilled players. They had the second overall pick in the draft last year. They have another first-round pick and Mishar to the Montreal Canadiens. So they have some talent on that roster, and I think they're a smart team, and they stick to their strategies. And they did the other night. It was 3-1 Canada at one point, and it looked like the game was on lock. But I give a ton of credit to Team Slovakia for fighting back in that game. They didn't quit, they didn't give up, and they put themselves in good positions. I look at Peter Repsik had a great tournament for me. Number 21, if you recall watching, he had a play on the 3-3 goal where he went around the net, incredible patience, and then found a man wide open in front. Just an incredible play. And he'll be 19 in a couple days. Still undrafted. I think he should be a 5th, 6th round pick. I think he can be a bottom 6 forward. I would take a flyer on the kid. I like him a lot. He's a point per game in this tournament. But you see them fight through. They get a deflection goal on the power play by Limar Nemec. And Slovakia going into the game had one thought. We are going to be physical with these Canadians. We're going to try to rattle this team. And they were. Slovakia was, let's be honest, they were dirty in the first period. After every whistle, they started shit. And they would get in people's faces. They were smacking guys. And quite frankly, Slovakia could have had more penalties in the game. There were scrums. I thought the ref might say enough of this, but they kind of let it happen the entire game. And, that's the way they want to officiate. That's the way they want to officiate. But they stuck to their game plan the whole game, and I give them credit for that because clearly, yes, they're outshot by a massive number, but they thought that's the way they were going to have to win. And, more power to them for sticking to that game plan. They were physical. They were mean. And unfortunately for Slovakia, why I think they lost the game in real talk here, 3-on-3 does not favor them. 3-on-3 going up against Canada, I think anybody playing Canada 3-on-3, you are in a losing proposition. You are in a bad spot because of Canada's talent and just the sheer number of weapons that they can throw at you. But let's be honest, you lose the game in overtime because of Boy Wonder. Because of Connor Bedard, who it seemed like he was on the whole time in overtime. It seemed like he never got off the ice. And the goal that he scored, where he went through all 3 players and then deked the hell out of the netminder to seal the win on the backhand, was truly one of the most incredible goals I've ever seen. A highlight reel, a Theorin Fleury type goal, a moment. And it shows you what high-end talent is. It shows you what this kid is all about. And he's 17 years old. Yes, he's in his second World Junior, but he's been putting this team on his back. He has been the backbone. He's been the most important player on this team from day one. They've asked him to do everything. Because I look at Canada beat Slovakia the other night. Without Connor Bedard on this team, I don't think they beat them. And quite frankly, I think this team so far has been pretty underwhelming. If you look at it, Dylan Guenther has 5 goals. Yes, they're all in the power play, which is fine, but you'd also like to have some production 5-on-5 that you can write home about. Shane Wright has 6 points in 5 games. To me, Shane Wright had an awful game the other night. He was a non-factor. He did nothing to help them win. And the only noteworthy thing that I can bring up from his game was him diving behind the net trying to sell a call on a hit that wasn't even a hit. So the 2 NHL forwards, Gunther's been better, but to me, again, he's a power play guy. 5-on-5, he's not a big production. He's not doing a whole lot. Bedard does it on the power play. He does it 5-on-5. He does it on 3-on-3. It doesn't matter. But looking ahead to today's game, if Connor Bedard's the only one doing anything, I don't think Canada will win tonight. Because, yes, he's the boy wonder. Yes, he's a phenom. But the Americans have more than one option. And when Canada's one of their better forwards the other night was Zach Opsachuk, who plays third, fourth line, that's a problem. That's a problem that Zach Dean and Opsachuk to score a number of goals to keep you in games. Where your de facto first line with Guenther, Shane Wright, and Brennan Othmann has been they're just there. They're not a line that puts fear into an opponent. To me, you like seeing that line if you're on the ice, if you're an opposing defense pair, because you don't got to go against Bedard, Stankoven, and Joshua Waugh, which has been by far the best line. By far. But if it's not Bedard, somebody needs to step up. And this is the Shane Wright game for me tonight. You are in the NHL. You want to be an NHL player. You feel slighted. We know about his story. And I've documented more than anybody about how the fact I don't think he gets critiqued enough for the way he's handled things, the way that he was in the NHL, but he's getting healthy scratch, but the media didn't talk about it because he's from Ontario, and I call it the Ontario tax. Nevertheless, I've seen him in this tournament, and he hasn't been as good as Cooley, who went in his draft. I don't think he's been better. Nemec had a horrible game the other night. I'll touch on that in a second. But I'm looking at that draft. Cooley has been the best out of those of the second, third, and fourth picks. Cooley's been the best player. And I think Meshar for Slovakia has been a better player in this tournament than Shane Wright. Meshar did a lot for Team Slovakia. He's number 10. If you go back and watch the game, go look at his stats in the tournament. The kid was around it. He was on their first line. He did everything for that team. Played penalty kill. He was on the power play. Shane Wright has positives in his game that will translate to the NHL. He's a physical guy when he wants to be. He can get in front of the net. I think he's going to score most of his goals in tight. But he doesn't win faceoffs. He doesn't put you in the greatest position. I find his line gets on the ice kind of sucks the life out of the place. He plays on the first power play where really he doesn't justify being there. Logan Stankoven plays on the second power play unit, which is a waste because the second unit never gets on the ice, and Stankoven is more dynamic and a more highly skilled offensive threat than Shane Wright. Or Othmann for the on the power play. I'd have Stankoven over either of those guys. Gunther's the power play specialist. Keep there. But Shane Wright, you've had an okay tournament, but now you're playing a team that's game. You're playing against Shane Cooley, who went a pick above you. Does that not motivate you? You played Nemec the other night, who went 2 picks above you. Didn't really motivate him. Because other than that top line, I think, Fantilli, I like the way he's played the last 2 games. But he's a fourth-line role, and he knows that, which I appreciate. He's trying to do too much. But he's playing that fourth-line role well. Through 30 minutes of the game the other night, I thought Zellweger was the best player on the ice for Canada. He had a few little snafus in the back half of that game, which you have to live with because he's an offensive defenseman, and that's the game. That's the way it is now. You're an offensive guy. You're going to take chances, and you're going to get burned. I'll take a guy that's willing to take a chance than someone that's just going to hang back and do never take a chance, because that's called fear. It's called playing with fear. I don't want people on my team that are afraid. I don't want people on my team that are just, okay, I know my role. I'm going to do this and try to stay in this box. Zellweger is a guy that looks at the box. It's like this, right? He's here, and he goes, I don't want to be here. I will go out here, and there will be times where the box shrinks, but I'm going to spread my wings and see what I can do. That's him. And I'll say, I watched him in the summer, and he's such a good skater. What a good skater. Watching him live. And another guy who doesn't, again, I'm going to have to say this all tournament, and he won't play because it's the second last game. And me and my dad don't agree a whole lot when it comes to sports. He's old school, and he likes meat and potatoes and defensemen that are boring, and probably not a big Zellweger fan. But Kevin Chorsinski, a Chicago Blackhawk, number 25 on. This guy he's going to be playing in the NHL. I don't know if he'll score 50, 60 points a season. He's going to play in the National Hockey League. Why? Because the dude can flat out skate. Just skate. I've never seen for him. He's just so effortless, and he's a big man too. I think he can put on a little muscle and be a defenseman that you don't really want to mess with. I think he could be a Jacob Slavin 2.0 because he moves better than Slavin. But he's got that instinct for defensive-minded hockey that are hard to teach. Jacob Slavin might not be appreciated but around the league. He is in Carolina because his coach is a genius, and they know that this dude will do anything to win, and he's just a really – but Chorsinski, love him. Love him. The unsung hero for Canada the other night was their goaltender. Thomas Milic had his best game of the tournament by far, and he made some key saves. The goaltender in the opposite end was the better goalie, no doubt about it. Way more shots. He kept the team in the game. But Milic made a couple key saves in overtime to keep Canada alive. He was prepared at every turn, and he didn't back down. He made some key big saves in key moments. Sliding across to make a save on Petrovsky in overtime. He made a key save on Machar at the end of the third period. So, he's your number one goalie. You're going to ride with him. And I think he's going to be really good again tonight. Because, again, I'm going to put it like this. Over the last 2 to 3 games, the U.S. has been a better team than Canada. That doesn't mean Canada doesn't have better players, but the overall team has been superior for the Americans. Logan Cooley started this tournament as a selfish player for me. He didn't even look when he got a pass. He just shoot it into a shin pad. He didn't make the smart play. He made the play he wanted to make, which is not always the right thing to do. He has morphed into a superstar in this tournament. Logan Cooley is playing, he had a hat trick against the Germans. Oh, it's against the Germans. I don't care. It's points. Everybody has point nights. He played well. I watched him against Finland. He was phenomenal in that game too. But if you go Cooley, Snugarud, and now Cutter Gauthier, one of my faves, finally found the back of the net against Germany to get some confidence. That's a 1-2-3. That's tough. Not to mention you got Boucher, who can produce on the power play. And you have Ufko, who had 5 assists against Germany. He's a defenseman. And I still think there's the Luke Hughes game that should come. I think he's been good in this tournament. I think he's going to need a big game to win this tournament for sure. So, to me, the Americans are getting balanced scoring. Red Savage had 2 goals against Germany. I mentioned Cooley had a hat trick. Snugarud leads the team in points. Cutter Gauthier had a pair of goals against the Germans. and you beat Finland 6-2, and then you beat the Germans 11-1, you're feeling pretty good about yourself going into tonight's game. You feel pretty confident. And not to mention, Trey Augustine has found his game. He's playing really well for the Americans. So let's just get to the matchups. Milic so the key matchups for today for Canada, U.S. My number one is power play. These two teams have number one and number two ranked power plays in the tournament. Now, Canada has one of the better ranked penalty kills, but you haven't played a power play like the U.S. yet. Stay out of the box. Stay out of the box for both of these teams. Don't take stupid penalties. If you think about the game the other night for Canada, they did not score when Simon Nemec was called for cross-checking at the end of the third period with 30 seconds left. But they did score in a power play with a penalty in the first period. You can't take stupid cross-checking penalties late in games. You can't take cheap shots on guys and put yourself in the box. It can decide a game. Because you have Cooley on the power play, you have Snuggerud, Hughes for the Americans, you have Boucher right in front of that net, who's a lot to deal with. He's a load in front of the net, and he can be difficult to box out. In particular, with the guys Canada plays on the penalty kill, it can be difficult to move him out of the blue paint. So stay out of the box. Don't put yourself in bad situations because both these teams will make you pay. Stan Coven and Shane Wright and not Stan Coven because they don't put him on the first power play unit. That's another thing I would do. He'd be on it tonight. One thing that I've noticed, there are definitely politics in this tournament. I've seen play that doesn't justify being on the ice in certain positions, and yet you're on the ice. Just because you're an NHL player, just because you came from there, doesn't mean you should just get to play automatically. I think we've seen that in the Shane Wright talk, in his play. Why is he on the ice? Why is he on the first power play unit? His play doesn't justify it. And there are people that love him that just support him no matter what. To me, it doesn't make any sense when his play has been crap. But to me, power play is key. Both teams want to try to get some power plays because that's the way they score goals. But also stay out of the box. Stay out of the box for these two teams. Key number 2. I'm watching tonight Connor Bedard versus Logan Cooley. Bedard has been the best player in this tournament. I think even if Canada does not win the tournament, he will win tournament MVP. Logan Cooley has been the best U.S. forward the last 3 games. So, where does this go? Well, I think both these guys want to have big nights, will be the reason that the team wins or loses just based on their scoring output. But again, Cooley went 3rd overall in the draft. Bedard will be going 1st overall in June. 2 guys that hope to be in the NHL one day that could potentially be on the same team. Cooley went to Arizona. Bedard could definitely end up an Arizona Coyote. So there's that angle too, where they could be teammates in the future. Maybe Bedard ends up out west in Anaheim and they play each other for the rest of their careers. There's a lot of different options with these 2 guys and how it ends up playing out for both of them. But I want to see them in a big spot. We saw Bedard in his quarterfinal where he was phenomenal. In the summer, he was really a non-factor in those elimination games. He wasn't the key cog in the machine. It was Kent Johnson. It was Mason McTavish. It was the older players that stepped up and were the main reason why Canada advanced. In this case, Bedard is only 17, but he's by far the best player. He's been the most productive, and they ask him to do everything. So continue to do that. And with Cooley, I think he feels great about his game going in, but I think he also has that freedom of knowing he's got Snuggerud, he's got Cutter, he's got Luke Hughes, he's got Chaz Luchas, more guys to rely on consistently than Canada has gotten. But you need, again, for Canada, they need a second option to come out tonight and play. They need a second option to start playing efficiently well and be a factor, because I don't think they've gotten that consistently enough for the entirety of this tournament. Another one for me, obviously, is net minding. You have Augustine versus Thomas Milic. This is kind of a crapshoot. I think both guys have been really good in the past number of games. But at the same time, you're playing against snipers. You're playing against really good players. And I don't think either team would admit this, but I think both teams look at this as the gold medal game, because I think both teams are pretty confident that they can beat the Czechs or Sweden. Now, they might lose that game. That might be their own hubris. But I don't think the U.S. or Canada care who they play in that semifinal. And I don't think that's a crazy thing for them to think. I like the Czechs a lot. We'll get to that semifinal in a second. But the U.S. and Canada have been really dominant. They've looked strong all tournament long. They really don't have many reasons to worry about this result. So I think it's going to be a really good game tonight. I think it's going to be a one-goal tight game. I don't know if it'll be any better than the one I saw Monday night, because that Slovakia game with the drama in there, the feel. But I expect a one-goal game tonight between Canada and U.S. because I think both teams are – I think on the surface, Canada is a better team. I just don't think Canada has gotten the production from their best players that they've expected so far in this tournament. Their top dogs haven't been as good as I think they thought they were going to be going in. So I think Canada wins tonight. I just think overall they're a better team. I think they'll get, and I think Shane Wright has a big night. I think Shane Wright has a multi-point night, and he has a game to remember. Because he came back here, he's the captain of this team. And I think if Connor Bedard's the only one buzzing out there tonight, USA will be in the gold medal game tomorrow, and Canada will be playing for bronze. But he can't do it all himself. But I'm going to say Canada wins tonight 4-3. Same as Monday. I think it'll be a 4-3 game. Wildly entertaining. Looking forward to it. But I think it'll be a really nip and tuck game. Shane Wright has a multi-point night for Team Canada. The second semifinal features Team Czechia and Team Sweden. This is a rematch from the preliminary round, and it's a revenge game of sorts. So these two teams met in August in the bronze medal game, Sweden winning that game 3-1. And it was a game I expected the Czechs to win. They were a better team in that tournament. Sweden just kind of sleptwalked their way through it, but they end up with the bronze medal. Now they play this in the preliminary round in Halifax, and Sweden beat the Czechs 3-2 in overtime, a game that the Czechs dominated, but Lindblom, who's been, I think, arguably the best goaltender in the tournament so far, really stood on his head, and Sweden wins it in OT. So now you have the third time these two teams are meeting in the past 5 months, and Sweden has dominated it. So this is the Czechs' opportunity at a revenge game times 2, and just trying to right some wrongs, if you will. Because to me, the Czechs are the better team going into this game, but that doesn't mean they're going to win. But they're a physical, big team that are hard to play against. I've talked about their defense, how I love most of them. Spacek, Svosel, smooth skater, who can make things happen. David Juracek, who's their guy in the back end who can just wire the puck. Up front, Yuri Kulich has really come out and has been, I think, one of the most impressive players in this tournament. Not named Connor Bedard. But Kulich, I'm just looking up him right now on the fly. He's playing in the American League right now at 18, and he looks the part. He's got 16 points in 24 games in the American League, which isn't bad, to be honest. But in this tournament, he's got 7 points in 5 games. He's got 5 goals. He's a great finisher. He had 8 points in 7 games in the summer. He was a late first-round pick in last year's draft, and he looks that way. He's been one of the better players in this tournament. He's a physical guy. He can make – I find he's a really good passer as well. Marcel, who scored a beautiful shorthanded goal on Monday in their win against Switzerland. He's really come out. He had 3 points in the quarterfinal on Monday. Jakub Barabanek, the Charlottetown Islander, continues to put up point after point. And one of the keys to this game for me is special teams. It's just penalty kill. On Monday, both teams scored a shorthanded goal. Sweden scored a shorthanded goal with 1 minute and 5 seconds left to win the game. Thomas Bjornfot, their captain, scored the ultimate game winner. Marcel scored a shorthanded goal in the first period to put the Czechs up 2-1, which was really the backbreaker before the floodgates opened, and the Czechs ultimately won that game 9-1. Can either of these teams get a special teams goal? Could they get a shorthanded goal today? Because they do have guys that will give you that opportunity. For Sweden, they started out in that game against Finland so poor on Monday. They did not have a shot until the 10-minute mark. And yet they found a way to win the game. But they're also playing a Finland team that was really flawed, that had terrible defense, and just didn't have the tournament that I thought they would. From the beginning, I thought the Czechs would medal in this tournament. I think they were finished first in their group. They dominated against the Swiss. I thought that game would be much closer. For Sweden, they need to start on time today because the Czechs, they did give up a goal in the first 30 seconds of that game on Monday. But after that, they were completely dialed in. Their goaltender has been rock solid, Thomas Sukanik. And I think you just got to, for Sweden, I'll know if their game today, their first couple shifts, they need to come out with energy. They need to come out ready to play. Leo Carlsson, who's an interesting player, he had his first 2 goals of the tournament on Monday. He started to flash a little bit for me. Fabian Lysell, who got brought in from Providence, has been a little snake bit. And Leo Carlsson is draft eligible this year. And he's got 4 points in 5 games for Sweden, so he's had a solid tournament. But again, you compare that to Connor Bedard, and it seems a little laughable. But he's draft eligible this year. He's projected to be a first-round pick. Isaac Rosen had a key goal. But I think for me today, Fabian Lysell needs to be a big contributor. He's always around the net. He's always getting good opportunities. The power play runs through him. But he's been a little snake bit. And this is his last tournament. Doesn't have a point in the tournament. No, he scored a goal. That's incorrect. I don't know why this is saying that, but I'm even thinking about. But yeah, he's been underwhelming in this tournament. He's gotten close looks, but he hasn't. He had 6 points in 7 games in the summer. He's playing in Providence. He's a point per game in the American League, which is hard to do. So, to me, it's his game to really come out and show people what's he about. I also love this kid, Sandin Pellikka, for Sweden. If you're watching the game today, he's a defenseman who is such a smooth skater. Such a smooth skater. He's going to be an NHL player. Axel Sandin Pellikka. He's 17, so he's the same age as Connor Bedard. He'll be in the same draft. This is his first World Junior. He doesn't get many points, but he's a smooth skater. He's playing in the Swedish Junior League in Svelka. He's got 26 points in 20 games as a defenseman. Love his physicality, the way he closes on pucks. He's a smooth skater. So I like his game. I like his game a lot from Axel Sandin Pellikka. And he's 17, but you could argue he's their most important defenseman on this team. I thought the Czechs would medal. With a win today, they will medal 100% because they'll either win silver or they'll win gold. I'm going to pick the Czechs in this game. I'm going to pick the Czechs in this game just because I think they're a little heavier. I think they'll wear down Sweden a little bit. They played better in their first matchup. I do think Sweden's goaltending is a little bit better. Lindblom's been consistently fantastic the whole tournament. But I'm going to bank on some of these on the Czech defense that continue to contribute. Sesturek, Kulich have started to find the back of the net regularly for the Czechs. I'm going to say the Czechs win today 4-2. 4-2. So I think we'll see the Czech Republic and Canada meet in a rematch in the gold medal game. Obviously, preliminary round rematch. But that's where I see this going. Czechs and Canada meeting tomorrow. Now, I could be wrong on both fronts. Again, Sweden's won the last two matchups, and they've had the Czechia's number, certainly. But I think they can find a way to win this game today. Because I do think they're the better team, top to bottom. Tomorrow, I'm going to do my players of the tournament. And tomorrow morning, I'll talk about just the players that I think have been the best in this tournament. I'm going to do my list, just the guys that have really, really impressed me just throughout watching the whole thing. And guys that I think can rise to that next level, can play NHL prospects that I think really can get there. Put on my scouting hat a little bit because I've been doing that this tournament. I've been enjoying it, and that's watching the games and just kind of dissecting it. And what I love about going is you're around people that are so pro Canada and things of that nature. I don't care who wins, so I just watch the players and I absorb the game. And again, I love the feeling. It's a great way to take in a sporting event for me. I've never had a better time watching sports. So I've been loving the tournament. But tomorrow we'll touch on that, and I'll get into some NHL stories as well. Just a shorter show today, getting things ready for later in the day. But I wanted a little preview show. Tomorrow we'll preview bronze medal and gold medal games, and I'm going to give out my players to watch in the tournament. The rest of the week, Friday, we'll be traveling back, but we'll do a show Friday afternoon, recapping everything, getting to the NFL weekend as well if there are games. So we'll do that Friday. Then Saturday morning, special podcast. Seamus will be joining me. We're going to talk about our predictions for 2023 Saturday morning. So that's what's on tap the rest of the week. But I'll be in this same location tomorrow morning to preview the gold medal game and recap everything that happened last night. So until then, have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the World Juniors. This has been To The Point.